Meeting the room. All right, well, I know we're a few minutes late here, but I want to welcome everybody to a Board of Selectmen special meeting for Tuesday, December 17th. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. So just a few quick updates. First of all, I just want to acknowledge, for any residents who are online here that we did receive a huge volume of emails, probably 60 or 70 about the Green Hill Sidewalk project. And that is not on tonight's agenda. So we're a special meeting, so any public comments would have to be focused on what the meeting agenda is, but we've received those emails. And that is actually going to be probably on January's agenda. They're still looking at refreshing up the design. We're getting an estimate to what that would be. So that'll be on a different Board of Selectmen agenda, not tonight. So we weren't prepared to have this on tonight's meeting agenda. So I just want to flag that I did try to respond to as many people today. I thought, oh, I hope these people are thinking this is what the topic is tonight. But I just wanted to flag that. Any people here to talk about that project. So we will not be taking public comment on that project tonight. The other thing I wanted to update is last week the Board of Education voted to release to the town the 3 vacant school buildings, Jeffrey, Ryerson, and Town Campus Learning Center. So that would go to effect January 1st of 2026. And so they would be turned over to the town, and then the town formally can then start beginning to go through what the process would be for decisions on that. And we have a facilities committee that's already ramped up to start addressing that, but there'll be a lot of public conversation about what we want to do to those buildings. But so they made that decision quickly because sometimes they can, until they do that, we can't really make any decisions about the future of this building. So as of January 21st, 2026, they will be officially town buildings and under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. And then I guess finally, I just want to wish everybody a happy holiday season. The next couple of weeks, hopefully everybody will have a good time to see their family and friends, enjoy our town. Hopefully everybody enjoying the new Light Up Madison this year. And get a chance to shop local too. So we have a lot of great shops in town and want people to enjoy, purchase as many gifts as they can to support local businesses. So that is okay. Oh, geez, yeah. So just say this has been, I think, 2 years or whatever. We keep talking it was going to come, and we actually pulled the trigger and put the town seal up on our blank blue wall. So. And I want to note also that James Madison is still here. He's been put back up. But we thought this was a really nice to have this. And so now for the public, everybody knows this is Madison when they look at our Board of Selectmen meetings and attend here. So, and this is with the new crest that we approved a year and a half ago with the town name in it. So, is that new on the board? And that's so we're official. So finally, I have to give a lot of thanks to our facilities director. Because we were struggling, we tried to get somebody to paint it. We were like, what do we put up there? And we couldn't get anybody to do. We tried a high school student. We tried all kinds of different things. And then he said, oh, I know this company that does this really easily. And so they print it out on a plastic thing. And I was like, awesome. So, hopefully everybody will enjoy that. So that is it for my update. Want to turn it over to liaison reports or selectmen comments?
Yeah. I do. You stole my thunder with the superintendent comment, but that's okay. I can go to plan B of my.
Because it's affecting my budget, that's why I was like.
So, nice transition. Yeah. So this is the Board of Ed liaison update. So Peggy mentioned the schools and how that's transitioning, but the superintendent is going to be presenting their budget to the Board of Ed on January 7th. This is a process that started back in September. It was a challenging process with 3 school closures and 1 opening. So just to bring that to light. And then a reminder from the superintendent that schools are closed from the end of the day on December 20th to Thursday, January 2nd. So that's that one. And then Madison Youth and Family, I'm just going to read this from our director. Madison Youth and Family Services, and the Madison Alcohol and Drug Education MAID Coalition are taking the lead to help the town determine the best way to use our opioid settlement funds. Connecticut towns are receiving opioid settlement funds as a result of legal settlements with major pharmaceutical companies accused of fueling the opioid crisis through deceptive marketing and distribution practices. These funds are being allocated to support local efforts in addiction treatment, prevention, and recovery following a series of lawsuits that held these companies accountable for their role in the widespread opioid epidemic. Madison has received a significant amount of these abatement funds and is working to evaluate the local effects of the opioid crisis while developing a plan to allocate the settlement funds in the most effective and appropriate manner. The town is contracted with Culture of Change as a consultant to help gather input with the community and stakeholders in order to create a report with recommendations for the Madison Board of Selectmen. As a part of the community assessment, residents and stakeholders are invited to take a short online survey, and those surveys, there's two of them. One is for community members and one is for stakeholders, and that is all described on the town website, on Madison Youth and Family website, and I think in Peggy's weekly update. So there are multiple places to take the survey. Please go out and look at it. Yes, very important stuff.
I know Scott had presented this whole opioid fund issue when we had our last meeting, so it's interesting to see how the recommendations were. Any other updates from commissioners?
I have senior commission update. So senior commission, they've settled on what their 2025 schedule is going to be for their meetings, which is a little different than what they've done in past years. So they will be meeting March through November, second Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m. They will not be meeting in January, February, or December unless they need to, and that's just to avoid driving at night. Because we do have seniors on that commission, so that was a concern there. The bathroom door project that was funded through ARPA funds is complete, and people are very happy with that. So that project is basically push button doors, so it's going to allow for better mobility for our folks that utilize the senior center, especially those with maybe balance issues, because they won't have those heavy doors to push any longer for the bathrooms. There are a bunch of holiday events going on. Their luncheon is coming up on the 19th. So if anybody would like to schedule for that, make sure you do so. And a few more things. Medicare open enrollment. Heather headed that up and she saw 85 appointments come through this year for consultation. AARP tax prep will be taking place at the senior center, and that's going to kick off in February. Folks will have the opportunity to make appointments online through a special AARP website. So that will be forthcoming, or by calling the senior center to make those appointments, and scheduling will begin on January 20th for those AARP tax prep appointments.
Okay, great. Any other updates?
A brief report from the police commission. We have a new captain in town.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Lieutenant York has been promoted to captain.
Great, congratulations
Many
to him, and I was
congratulations.
able to attend that, which was nice to see his family and everything there, but a big step in his career.
Just to echo your comment about the schools and it impacting the budget, because it will be part of the budget that we're going to be working on soon. I would suggest maybe we create a separate timeline for working that out that then can marry into the budget later on in the process, so that we have that one figured out.
Yeah,
So
we've
that
had
could
we've had conversations
Good idea, yeah.
about how assumptions we've made about, you know, the costs and what costs would be incurred and everything once it
Now,
turned over.
So my
So
recollection is that the demolition of Ryerson was part of the bonding package. That was part of the,
it was part of if they had the funding available, so that's gonna be part of the conversation, you know. We have to get a report from the elementary school committee to see if they've got the fund. It was part of that new elementary school budget, so we have to get an update from them.
okay.
So, but that had been discussed, that if there were funds available in that budget, that it would be used to take down Ryerson. So, but we'll have a lot of opportunity to talk about facilities.
But
So,
I think that we
Yeah.
probably don't want to get that tangled into the regular budget line item
No,
discussion.
no.
Agreed.
no,
Be its own.
yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. Okay, well, with that, I guess we could turn it over to citizens' comments, and hands raised, and because this is a special meeting, if we could be focused on the agenda topic,
Yes.
any hands raised? Yes, please?
Terry Vandenolder, 17 Bartlett Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I looked at the agenda and I noticed on item 8 and 9, you're gonna be talking about awarding $75,000 to a consulting company for the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. I'm curious if that's doing that now before knowing what you're gonna be recommending for Green Hill Road, et cetera, it might be putting the cart before the horse. But in addition to that, with the charge to the bike and pedestrian committee, or not committee, I guess they're a
Committee.
committee,
Like advisory.
they're supposed to work in coordination with planning and zoning. But what about the other departments within the town that obviously our stakeholders and should have an input? For example, Conservation Commission, the risk management, public works, the engineering department. So when you put this out to a consulting company and it's just being guided by the pedestrian and cycling committee, that is gonna skew what they're going to recommend versus having inputs from all the others departments within the town to which this could be a critical issue.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Any other comments in the room? Anybody else want to raise their hand? No. Anybody publicly has their hand raised?
John Rice has had his hand raised.
Hello.
Hey, John, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Hi, John Rasmus, 4 Governors Way. I had a comment concerning the Academy project, and after hearing what was said earlier, I'm not sure if it's appropriate for this meeting or.
I mean, Academy's on our agenda, so you're welcome to share your comment.
Okay, I guess what I'll say is it appears to me that we will not have a community center as communicated to the voters at referendum, $15.9 million community center. And I would just suggest that a legal opinion be obtained to determine whether we can deliver this project, a community center, or if we cannot, if there's some way that a reconsideration of the whole project could be made. So I'll just make that comment. Obviously, I think it's been out there in the public. The bids came in, and I don't believe we can deliver a community center for $15.9 million.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Any other hands raised? No? Okay, great. We'll move on to the consent agenda, which is quite long, so I will not read it, but it's posted. Obviously, before we move this, I just want to recognize that there's some important resignations for people who've served the town for a long time, including Gene Fitzgerald. Bill Pickett has served on Salt Meadow Park for a long time, and obviously Ron Goldenson from the Board of Assessment Appeals. Grateful for their service. But with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. Any further conversations or comments? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, item number 7 is discuss and take action to approve a return of $328,883 from CIP residual project balances to the master account in the CNRE fund.
So moved.
Okay. Okay, so this is basically going through, they've been spending a lot of time, and I don't know if Ben is on here. I know that our facilities director is out on vacation this week and next, so he's not here to speak to this, but this has been an ongoing practice. They've been culling through and finding things where they got it in either under budget or the project was, not moved forward. So they're just returning the project balances.
Great.
Okay, any further questions on that? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item number 8 is discuss and take action to approve releasing funds from the planning reserve in an amount not to exceed $75,000 to fund the development of a bicycle and pedestrian master plan, pending Board of Finance.
Second.
Okay, this has been a plan that has been discussed for years. It's a high priority of both of our bike ped committee. They work very closely with our public works department, our town engineer, and the town planner. They're very involved in all this and will be involved in developing this master plan. Green Hill is one component of many town roads in town, and so this is going to look overall the broad strategy and come up hopefully with a list of targeted improvements, either roadway improvements or public works projects to improve safety for bikes and pedestrians in town. So this is just a plan that we've talked about wanting to do a long time. We finally went out to bid. Budget came in kind of high. We kind of scaled the scope back a little bit and got it at around this number. And excited to move forward. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. This is just using money that we have in the planning reserve. It's kind of standard.
No
way of
questions.
funds.
I would
Yeah.
like to use this, though, as an opportunity to say that we talk a lot about sidewalks, we talk a lot about, not bike heads specifically, but the greenway, the shoreline greenway. What hasn't gotten a lot of serious discussion is a north-south greenway trail, something that connects the shoreline to the northern part of town. This would be a very large undertaking and would require corralling private landowners, the state land, the land trust, probably the water company. But when we talk about connecting the town, something that was maybe crossed a few roads, but didn't rely on paved roads to move pedestrians and bikers, I mean, given the distance, I think would be a worthwhile project for the committee to take up and really.
I remember-
It is actually part of
I
the
think it's part of the
scope
plan.
is trail systems.
Well, I
and,
remember them showing a plan
Yeah,
going north
yeah,
and south. It
there
wasn't
is,
like on Route
yeah.
79 either.
Yeah, no, and part of this is connecting because we have an extensive amount of trails in town. So all throughout the land trust properties and the water authority properties. So this would try to create a vision of that, which, so yes, that's part of the discussion.
And I'm thinking of
Yeah.
a cinder style trail, something that would be friendly to all kinds of riders, not just the rugged, go out and do
Right.
anything.
Like Bruce.
riders.
I know a guy.
Yeah.
But, moving people north-south, I think, is just as important as moving people east-west.
Well, and I look at it, I spent a lot of time in the UK and they have this incredible footpath system all throughout the country, right? So you can walk and follow the little footpath signs aligning like a farmland or going through the woods or going through a neighborhood. So, that concept, I think, is something a lot of people in town would like to see, but yeah, so that's all. And everybody there'll be public hearings, getting input into the plan. There's going to be a lot of involvement from the public as this develops, so.
Almost like our own little rail trail.
Yeah.
We could build a railroad, then they'll go defunct.
Yeah. 100 years later, we would have our track. So without any further questions, motion to, we already moved it, right? So all in favor of approving item number 7, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, great, excited to move that forward. And then this is the next item is discuss and take action to approve releasing funds from the planning, under 9, so discuss and take action to accept a recommendation from the bike ped committee and town staff to award a contract to SLR Consulting in an amount not to exceed $75,000 for the development of the bike ped master plan and to authorize the selectmen to sign all contracts and documents associated with this award pending Board of Finance approval. They'll be seeing this in January. So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, okay, so, and then the last item before we get to academies, number 10, discuss and take action to accept a recommendation from the Department of Public Works to award a contract to Stantec Consulting in the amount of $114,450 for surveying, design, permitting, and bidding and analysis for the Scotland Avenue roadway improvements project, and to authorize the first select woman to sign all contracts and documents associated with this award budgeted fiscal year 2023-2024 capital improvement plan, companies on the South Central Regional Council of Government on-call engineering consultant list. So moved.
Second.
Okay, and this is just regarding Scotland Avenue, which we got that big grant for earlier in the year. And this is to get the design moving. I'm excited to see our new town engineer is really plowing through and getting things moving quickly.
Yeah.
So excited to see how this shapes. Any questions on that? You got a memo from him on the project and
Yeah.
you're all familiar with it?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great. All right, so moving on to item number 11, update from the Ad hoc Academy Community Center Building Committee on bid proposals and potential next steps. So I want to welcome, we have our advisors on the Academy project. We have one of the members of the committee. I'm sure you guys are you had your meeting before ours.
Nice.
Obviously, we received bids last Tuesday, I think it was. I think we all were a little disappointed. We were kind of hoping we would kind of be on the other side, on a more favorable side. Unfortunately, we were not. I know the building committee's got a presentation on that, and so I think now you're sharing with us what you presented to the building committee, correct?
Yeah.
So Colliers is our project manager, advisor, whatever you call it.
Owner's rep.
We have our architect here, owner's rep, I always forget that term. And I know other members of the Colliers staff and the architect staff here. So you're gonna do your presentation then?
I do.
Okay, so can you put that up?
Put it up.
So,
We'll walk you through just a general update as to where we are, where we were, where we are, what has changed, and then we can certainly talk about where we're going. We did have a very good meeting prior to this to talk about some next steps. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. Oh, there you go. Perfect.
there's a little delay.
All right, so in terms of where we were, so as it's been reported, back in 2022, the town voted for a $15.9 million total project budget for the renovation to the academy into a community center. Embedded in that 15.9 was a construction budget of $12.180 million to cover the construction costs. Through the design, through lots of meetings and processes, multiple estimates, including the most recent one, which was in October of this year, that 12.18 scope was estimated to be $14.63 million or $2.4 million over that budget. And there was a lot of discussion about whether or not to move forward with bids, not bids, what do we do? And the decision was to, let's go to bid, see what the market is actually dictating the project to be. The construction market is ridiculously volatile. It has been for the last several years. And we just wanted to see what the market told us this project was worth. So we went to bid. There was a lot of early bid activity. There were a couple dozen representatives at the pre-bid meeting, so that was good. There were probably a dozen or so general contractors there.
That's good.
So it certainly like there was enough activity and interest in this project. And you'll hear in a moment how many bids we received, but the low bid that was received was $17.3 million or 5.1, nearly $5.2 million over the referendum construction budget. There were a series of alternates, which we'll talk about in a moment. If you add those alternates to the base bid, it brings it up to $19.7 million, $7.5 million over the 12.1 construction budget. So there's a mountain in front of us. We understand that. Go to the next slide, please. So I'm not going to have you test your eyes on this document. I do have hard copies that I'll hand out afterwards.
Yeah, the board got a copy of
Oh, you
it.
did? Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
Okay. So this is the bid summary, which is really just the tabulation of the construction budget, so that's $12.18 million. You can see we received 6 bids. Unfortunately, what appeared to be the lowest of the bid, closest to our estimate, had to withdraw because they did not include one of the major subcontractors. They realized that probably fairly quickly after they saw the other bids, that something was missing. And then they realized that they did not carry a major trade, so the next day withdrew their bid, which led us to 5 bids. The way this form works is on the left-hand side, you see the bidders, Bismarck, KDE, PAC, Pelletier, Wilson Construction. The next section was really just process, did they include the right forms, did they acknowledge the addenda, did they have a bid bond? And they all obviously, yes, 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 so that's good. That made it a responsive bid. Because if any of those were missing, it would not have been a responsive bid, and they would have been disqualified for that reason alone. The next section is called allowances, and those are values that we think they're gonna have to carry. Those are included in the base bid. If they don't need, we'll be tracking those allowances throughout the course of construction. If they don't use all of those values, the money goes back to the town. But we wanted to see those isolated out because the scope of the work may be different than what was in the bid documents. And then the next section to the right, the larger grouping, is those alternates that I spoke about earlier. That range between $2 to $4 million, essentially, round numbers. And it included everything from fitting out these services to playground, to other enhancements to the project. You know, things that the building committee saw during the course of design that they thought the town would want. If we could afford it, we would include it, but we didn't want to include it in the base bid. So that just sort of summarizes all of the numbers and all of the values, which again helps us to align bids from an apples to apples perspective.
Mark, just quickly before you move on, for the base bid would include things like the HVAC, septic, things like that.
HVAC, that all the things that are required that you have to do if you're gonna occupy this building. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks. So that's
Oh, I just comment that the 2 parallel bidders, Pack Group and Pelletier Construction, their numbers are very close to each other, 17.3 and 17.7 change. As well as A. Secondino and Son, the bidder that withdrew his bid, we followed up with them, found out that they left out their HVAC number, which was 3.6 million. That would have made their bid 17.8. So that would not have made them the low bidder. But what I just wanted to demonstrate is that the low bids, those including A. Secondino and Son's adjusted number, they're all within,
Plus,
400,000. So we think the bids, the base bid numbers are a good number. We're not happy with the number being over budget, but it's a good, solid representation of what the project would cost in today's marketplace. I think, next steps would be to evaluate those 2 low bidders, for viability, and the building committee, as we can attest to, is going to be working on evaluating the alternates for inclusion in the project. Most of the alternates, if you look across the spectrum of the alternates between the 2 low bidders, a lot of them, 5 of the 11 are right on, 12,000 and 10,000. But there are three or so that have big variances. So we're gonna do some diligence, talk to both bidders, find out, what they have in their number, what's not in their number, if the number is valid. Just so that when the building committee considers incorporation of those alternates, the right dollar figure is included in the right scopes.
Can I ask a question on, so when we have here, for example, we have the 2 town departments in here, and, for example, youth and family services. That, when we talk about fit out, is that the room, the area of the building that they were gonna pay? Does that mean the cost of demo of those walls and then building the walls? So, right, so that's HVAC and everything, or is the base building, you're getting HVAC throughout that, the core package, right? But you're not getting The office fit out?
specific HVAC
For,
lines.
for
to
each,
offices.
right, okay, so it'd just be the rooms would still be set up the way they are.
Yep.
They would have air conditioning, they would have all the finishes and everything that you're doing throughout the building, they're just not gonna have the office fit out.
That's correct.
Okay, and then FF&E is completely separate, right,
Completely
that's what I thought, okay. And that's the same with Beach and Rec, which is so smaller, I was trying to understand what this meant in terms of,
Maybe for the public, just what's FF?
oh, sorry, fixtures, furniture, and equipment. So, and that's considered a soft cost, as I've learned, right? It's not construction, it's soft costs, and that
Chairs
comes
and tables
after.
and.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. But the rooms of the two classrooms and areas up there, if you didn't do this package for youth and family services, I'm just trying to understand, they'd just be configured as they are now,
Yep.
but they would be
Cleaned
cleaned up and,
Yep.
and all the new windows and,
Yep.
right, okay, okay.
Finishes in there.
Right, it's not like you're not gonna touch those rooms, they would have new windows, air conditioning, floor, like cleaned up flooring, all that stuff, okay.
It's ready for somebody to move in. and
It's
then-
a big blank room versus if you actually build it, divide it into partitions with doors and separate office
Yep.
controls and
Yeah.
separate lighting for
Right,
each
right, right,
office
right.
versus, it's taking this room and delivering it versus if you said, I want to put 5 offices in this room. It's that cost of dividing this into 5 offices.
And then, I'm sorry, did you have?
I was just gonna say, I just noticed that PAC group, they were the only one who included the youth family services office outfit in their base bid, as opposed to everybody else. I mean, is there a reason that they did that way?
We're gonna clarify that. We'll ask them why they did it that way.
Okay.
Realistically, we can compare the bidders just by taking Pelletier's bid for that alternate and putting it into their base bid. So we can compare the two base bids.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that they're apples to apples, so to speak. But it's a pretty small number, Pelletier's variant. It's like a $40,000 difference, which is,
If that's the
Yeah.
right number.
if that's right.
Right.
I just noticed that, PAC group had some much higher numbers in different areas with ad alternates than Pelletier did, so I was like, is there a reason that those numbers are so much higher? Is it to offset the inclusion of youth and family services office outfit?
So that's the thing we'll get to the bottom of. I
Okay.
mean, essentially Pelletier's base bid is a little higher. So their alternate scope might be lower because some of their alternate scope is interpreted as base bid scope. So, it's not an exact science when they create bids and they put alternates and they probably move scope around. So part of the vetting process is just to identify, hey, do you have everything in here? I know you've only carried 40,000. Is the rest of that in your base bid number, or where is the rest of that scope?
Okay.
So we're gonna vet that. But another thing that we recommended to the building committee was there are a few alternates that have a big variation. For instance, the playground equipment.
Yeah.
One person has 70,000, one has 360. Both of those numbers are grossly incorrect. So,
We have a cost of-
so our recommendation to the building committee is going to be, don't include that alternate. How about we include an allowance for $200,000 for a new playscape in the budget? And either we can buy it through the contractor indirectly, or we can buy it directly. I'm sure Austin has resources to get.
I know a couple of schools that are getting shut down that have to. So,
Maybe we could relocate, you
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah.
So there's a couple alternates, like gymnasium equipment, there was a big variation.
Yeah,
We could put a small alternate in, a small allowance in there, and then we can just buy basketball hoops.
right.
Um,
Yeah, well, and I know some of the other big numbers in here have to do more with the site, and I think it's important to talk about, this is on the next slide, if you guys have questions about that.
Well, I have actually a question about the prior slide. You were giving the delta between the budget and the actuals, and you were expressing it in a way that I hadn't seen. If we could go back.
I think there's a delay.
Yeah, so let's do low base bid, construction value of 17, it's a $5.1 million difference. I have been thinking about this very simply as 15.9 million, and then the delta is anything over 15.9. Is that incorrect? Should we be thinking about this as a $5.2 million
No.
difference?
No, you're right. I mean, we look at project budgets, not just construction budgets, but the purposes of tonight's update was to just talk about the big delta between the construction budget and the construction bids. Ultimately, Bruce, when we come back and talk about what, based upon the building committee's recommendation for alternates, what a new total project budget will be, it'll be against the $15.9 million. Because we're gonna probably want to include some additional contingency to cover the higher construction value now that we have. Proportionally, the value that we have in our budget is percent not comfortable for a $17 million project, just ratio.
So just for anybody who's just reading the headlines, this doesn't represent a $5.2 million increase over the
No.
referendum.
No,
Okay,
this is just an update as to where we are today. It's
just clarifying.
not,
From a construction.
From a construction standpoint.
Yeah, so it's all relative to the 12, not the
Right.
15.9.
Right.
So.
Yeah, because we're
it's
not in
little
a position right
confusing,
now
I
to
guess.
do anything with the
That's a good
soft
point.
costs because
Yeah.
it's still
Right.
It's an optics thing.
Yeah,
other
and
discussions.
the difference between the 12 and 15 has a lot of different things, and not just contingency, it has.
No, soft
fees,
costs,
Yeah, exactly,
furniture.
FF&E, you know, all that other stuff, so
Yeah.
that's a whole separate conversation before we could ever think of if we wanted to put more money into this project by getting permission from the public, we would have to go through the whole, you know, review of both the soft cost budget and the construction budget, so.
And then on the grid, the next slide. So if we were to look at the PAC group bid, that's the low bidder, and say no to all the ad alternates, the project comes in at 17.3. But is the project complete?
That's the contract, 17. Is the project complete?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, so the word alternate feels like add-on, extra, nice to have. Is a community center up and functioning at 17.3?
Yes, what it doesn't include, it does include family services because they include it in their number, but it wouldn't include the fit out beach rec. It wouldn't include recital, it wouldn't include all the other ad alternates. But it would be.
But those are not crucial to the community center functioning as a.
As a day one, like a day one thing.
Correct. We've made minimal site improvements just to provide access to the building and to clean up the existing parking lot. We have to do the septic system reconstruction, but all the proposed site work would not be in the project. Those were the two big alternates. At the end of the day, we're probably gonna recommend to the building committee that the site work alternates be included as a part of the project.
That's column 7 in the table.
6 and 7.
6 and 7. And of course, recommendation that you did fit out these building services. The building committee will make final decisions, make their formal recommendation back to you. Some of the other stuff can all be done at another time. Kitchen equipment, gym equipment, playground, those are things we could buy individually, either down the road or we could include allowances and try and buy them cheaper directly.
Well, and I think that the next slide talks about some of this it wasn't the original project scope because we weren't envisioning having to move the septic and redo the septic in that way. So that opened up like all these other costs, right? So that's why the playground's getting moved and the parking lot's getting redone. So that layered on an additional, $800,000 or whatever costs onto the project that was not anticipated necessarily. So maybe to go to we can go back to this, but I just think the next page is important.
Okay.
Because people are gonna whoa, what happened, right?
Yeah, so as Peggy was talking about, there are some scopes that, crept into the project after the referendum in February 2022. And the first one, so we broke it down into sort of two categories. One required, the code of life safety is dictating it, the other. It's not required, but certainly something that would be beneficial to the community. So under the required side, the new septic system, and then we also put like from a budget impact, a high, medium, or low, which is to say that, this was fairly significant from a pricing perspective. So the new septic system that was required, that's required. That had a relatively high impact. A full HVAC replacement versus just upgrades was also another high impact. Full electrical system replacement, which was required, that was a high impact. You want to talk about this roofing system, cavity insulation, Tom?
Yeah, so when we did the selective demolition, which was a task that we took on with the environmental consultant to determine where all hazardous materials in the building might be, we discovered that the roof plenum, the existing roof, has a big gap. There's actually two roofs on the building. There's like a lower roof and a higher roof. There's a big plenum space there. Well, now we have to treat that appropriately for the building code. We have to insulate that and we have to put sprinklers in that space. So that was something unforeseen and we're gonna have to incorporate it, but it's a life safety issue that has to be done. Additionally, the plaster walls of the building, they all have asbestos containing materials in them. And this is pretty typical of buildings of this vintage. But because the building has taken on so much moisture infiltration in the last 2 years, and I will point out the building committee took action early this year, like in the beginning of the year, to board up the building to make sure that it's, not taking direct water anymore. But a lot of the plaster walls have started to flake and deteriorate, so we had to carry a significant number to stabilize those walls and rebuild them. Because once they become flaky, the asbestos material becomes friable, it's called. It basically, small particles that get in the air and then it becomes a health hazard. So this is a life safety issue that we have to address as a part of the project. Mark mentioned the HVAC system. We've talked about this before, but the original study that was prepared by Mark's team and our team anticipated reusing some of the systems in the building. But when the MEP engineer got into the building, went through the whole building, they discovered that we really can't reuse any of the building infrastructure. So the full replacement of the mechanical systems, heating, cooling, air conditioning, and dehumidification, combined with replacement of the full electrical system, new electric service, distribution, lighting, etc. Those are two massive numbers. The HVAC system was approximately $4 million, and the electrical was just behind it at almost $3 million. So of the total bid, which the low bid was 17 and a half, about 7 million of it was just the mechanical and electrical. So those were, unforeseen elements that had to be taken care of to stabilize the building that contributed, it was scope that wasn't anticipated in the original study, and obviously there's a massive cost associated with that scope.
Do you have any sense
But that's
of
in-
why they weren't anticipated though? I guess I'm confused in the sense that,
Well,
is it just time that passed? That,
Yes,
or is it
and
until
no.
you get behind the wall and really know?
Yes and no, but it's when you do a preliminary study and you walk through the building and you look at the boiler, all right, the boiler's 18 or 15 years old, we can reuse the boiler. That's just an example. But then when you really start picking the project apart, you go in there and you investigate, you're looking at all the distribution piping, right? You're pulling back insulation and looking at all the couplings and the joints. Then they're exposing the real conditions and they're saying, wow, this really is not good. So, you really have to take a more in-depth assessment. Also, I think, when you're trying to investigate a project, you also want to be fiscally responsible, right? And you don't just carte blanche say, oh yeah, we'll just replace everything, it's easy, right? So I think there was real hope we could reuse a number of those systems, and I think it was a fair assessment, but once we started getting into it, the professionals just said, our consultant professionals said.
Do you think that, obviously, we're in a very different cost environment now than, I think 2019 was probably when the first, when the original Academy Committee met, right? And this budget was put together. How much of this is just construction inflation also? I mean, you've added a lot of these things, but is that also, you've added an expensive item, but then on top of that, cost has gone up for electrical 10, 15, 20%.
That's
Do
a
you think
huge
some?
part of it, Peggy. This,
Yeah.
you know, we just had a consultant come in and speak to our office the other day. And since 2021, construction market's gone up 30%.
I was gonna say 25.
Just in the
Yeah.
Northeast, 30% has gone up. And, you know, we track, you know, trades, commodities, you know, on a regular basis. You know, and it really does this. You know, for a while, wood was really expensive, and that kind of settled down. Well, now metals and copper are starting to spike significantly in the market. And it's really hard. It's like predicting Powerball numbers, right? It's really hard to predict what the market's going to do, you know?
Well, it happened on the Polson project. They opted not to replace all the ductwork because it's so expensive. The raw materials for the ductwork, so they went and did a whole different plan. That was one of the reasons they came up with the plan that they did.
And if you remember back, so we knew that this thing was trending with the budget, right?
Yeah.
I remember being in this room back in April or May.
Yeah.
And there were strategies to stay on the $12.1 million budget. It just would have been a very different looking project. It would have been very,
Right.
you wouldn't have had that new entrance. You wouldn't have had.
Yeah.
So, you know, the building committee, you know, wanted to try and maintain, you know, a building, a 50-year building, a 75-year building, you know, that the community can use and just be reactive to just the market and see what.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that we had that conversation in the spring where there was an alternate design that would have been very different in terms of the entrance to the community center. It would have been different than the design that went to referendum. It still would have had all the functioning of a community center, right? But it would just be a different look and feel to it, you know? And I think the building committee rightly made a recommendation to stick. Let's try to go for it, what we really envisioned. And I think our board supported that, so we understand that. Because they spent a lot of time trying to value engineer the project down, right? There's a lot of time talking in how you can try to value engineer it down. But at the end of the day, you know, we had hoped that we might, as the new school project did, we came in on a more favorable side and we might have some wiggle room there to get this, you know, completed. But unfortunately, that's not the case, so.
Sometimes use the word refresh. What will the public see and experience when they walk into this building?
So the good thing is that the building will be brand new. Interior, it's really almost a renovate as new construction. Entrance lobby, the stairs, a brand new elevator that will take you to all 3 floors. Connection on both sides of the basement, so all the areas of the building will be fully accessible. When you walk into the building and you go up half a level to the main level, we're infilling the courtyard and creating a whole new cafe space. It's a pre-function space that all of the activity spaces are surrounded by, and that'll be a 2-story space. All of the classrooms are going to be, I sensitively use the word historically, but historically restored. We're leaving the tin ceilings, we're refinishing the walls, we're leaving a lot of the existing millwork and trying to recapture, you know, the beauty of those elements that were in the building. The entire outside of the building gets repointed, it gets new windows, it gets all new lighting. And then, of course, we have the new entryway, which is a nice glass entrance. The lower level will have a multifunction room that is with a proposed kitchen space for gathering. Excuse me, the gymnasium is going to be renovated new, the gymatorium. And then both performance spaces, the recital hall, which is in the front on the south side of the building, is going to, if the whole project goes forward, get a whole new stage, right? It'll be a recital hall type space. Hopefully get a lot of acoustic improvements and equipment to help improve performances in that space. And then there will be upgrades to the auditorium, the gym auditorium, I guess they call it the gym auditorium in some schools. So that stage can be used for community theater, playhouse. And then I'll be honest, I can't believe I'm giving credit to the landscape architect, but the proposed site package is really amazing. It's a real commitment, and I hope the project and community can afford it because it will truly transform the site and bring all 4 of those campus buildings together. They're going to reconstruct the parking area with drop off for the building, but all that parking will also serve the adjacent playscape and the adjacent play fields. There'll be new walkways, impervious paver walkways between all of the buildings. And then between the current Youth and Family Services building and the new building is a new outdoor patio, which can be used as an outdoor classroom, gathering space, arts and performance type space. It will be lit with festoon lighting. It's the site package is really going to bring the whole campus together. And if the funding is available, it's going to be amazing.
Thank you, Tom.
And is that the site upgrades that are listed in the bid alternate?
Yeah, the
That's
2
what that
bid
is.
alternates, correct.
Al, if you get a chance, I mean, just like, it's hard to visualize everything he's talking about, but if you get a chance, look up Bristol City Hall. So Bristol City Hall is a job that Tom did, we worked on as well. That took a 3-story existing building that was not attractive at all. It was attractive 40 years ago when it was built. And Tom did a lot of what's happening in the community center to that building, right? You have the new 3 glass entrance and when El Zapo, the mayor.
Yeah.
Talk to her about
Yeah.
what that building was like versus today.
Yeah.
And it is transformative, right? And it's again, it's a very similar concept. It's a city hall and a community center. Glass entrance, open, airy area, and then new finishes, and it's a completely different experience walking in that building. If you just go look at pictures, you'll see what this building will look like, or could look like. Thank you. It's nice.
No, I'm just trying to understand all the moving parts. That's it, and but that's all in the base bid.
Yeah.
No,
Essentially,
The ones on the left are on the base bid, but we didn't get some of the scopes on the right, which was, we talked about the enhanced parking, hardscape, site lighting. That Tom was just referring to, again, not required, by code, but, visual community.
right, otherwise, if we didn't do that, we have to do the septic, we have to rip up the parking lot, they would just like patch it.
Yeah.
Basically, and.
Or even when we envisioned in February 2022, we didn't know we were gonna need to upgrade the septic
Right.
system.
Right,
It was really just gonna be, repave the existing parking lot,
Yeah.
add a little bit of additional parking,
right,
and that was it.
right.
The last bullet is the relocation of the playground. I know that's important. Every time I'm at that
Yeah.
building, when it's not 20 degrees, I know kids are there.
Yeah,
So, yes, it says it's not required, it's not desired, it's just not a code requirement. And then the last one, I don't know, Tom, if you can speak to this one, the stage upgrades, the light box, and the recital stage.
Oh, yeah, so there was a number of recommended improvements by our performance auditorium consultant. They recommended that we make some adjustments to this recital hall stage configuration and access to that room to improve acoustics, improve functionality. Those were things that weren't anticipated in the original scope. They don't have a massive cost impact, but they have a cost impact. But they will have a significant function impact. So functional impact, so
And the base bid though, does include the recital hall with the rooms, the niche to the side, that's all gonna get renovated as part of the work.
that's correct.
Okay, and the ADA access for the stage? I
That
forget,
is
there was, I know
correct,
there's a
yeah.
lot of discussion about how to do that for the stage, that's all part of the
So
base.
there's two approaches to the project. One is to leave the stage as it is and provide a lift. The second, the alternate is to rebuild the stage, make it lower, provide a ramp. So that's that's one of the alternates.
Either way, we have to be ADA compliant.
Right.
So the less expensive option is a lift. However, from a facility standpoint, lifts break constantly. So lowering the stage and providing a ramp, not only aesthetically, functionally is better, but maintenance wise is better. However, it comes with a
The
front loaded
But one
cost.
is included in the base cost and one is not. Or
So-
one is an
both
alternate. Rebuilding the
Rebuilding
stage
is
is
the
the alternate. But it was recommended by the theater consultant, because that stage is pretty high to begin with, and it's a small space, it's really more of a recital, that's why we call it the recital hall. So lowering it, providing, a few stair access and then providing ramp at the back will allow the stage to actually be bigger, because we don't have the room for the lift and the stairs in the front. So it drastically improves what you can do there.
Well, I think that, lots to take in, obviously. And I know the building committee is gonna be
We go to
taking
the next
it.
slide. Just the last slide is always the recognition of
Oh, right,
the
yeah.
team and the hard work that they,
Yeah.
that they put in. They really do work tirelessly and a lot of special meetings. So.
A lot of work has gone into
A
that.
lot
I
of
know they're
work.
very
Yeah.
involved at a very deep level, and so a lot of what went out into the bid package. And I think one of the things that they have focused on is using the feedback from the community. Because the Academy Advisory Committee, we kind of forget about that, but over a year ago, they did a lot of work getting information about what the public wanted to see in this community center. So they really felt it was important that as much of that get incorporated into this final design that went out to bid. So we'll recognize that because that was important work. And that drove a lot of the decision-making process to get us to where we are today. So a lot of thought went into it.
I get to work with a lot of building committees, and this committee has had a real difficult challenge. At all three phases of the project, they worked exhaustively to try and reduce the cost of this project. But they were not shackled, but they struggled with the fact that making real cost reductions meant breaking the promises that the overall, referendum goal had. So it was a real struggle for the committee to get there.
Yeah, they want to do what's right for the community,
Right.
balancing everything,
Right.
the fiduciary responsibility, programmatic desires and wishes, right? This is a building that's been sat vacant for how many years? And yeah, and dealing with the market that we're in right now, this is the
Yeah.
other complexity.
A lot of headlines,
Yeah, for sure.
Reflect on. Well, I think, I mean, we're very appreciative of the report, obviously disappointed. I think we're all a little stunned. I think it's I think what I struggle the most about is how there was an estimate in October and we're still 2 million off of that, so more off of that. That would be helpful to get some more understanding of what drove that. And I know your committee's gonna be digging into all that. The reason our board, I think, decided to go to bid, we had this conversation over the summer that, we feel an obligation to let the public make the decisions on this, right? And, but we didn't want to do it without hard numbers, just because of the crazy market that we've been living in, right? And we went through this a little bit with this new school, right? We thought we were gonna need all this money, and then we ended up not needing it, luckily. So we didn't want to create a lot of public expectations for the second referendum, and then still not be able to meet those expectations, right? With bids, so the positive that came out of this, it's a hard number, it is what it is. And I know we talked about options in the spring about going back to the public to ask more permission, to spend more money on the project. We also were fortunate because we've been successful at getting both a state bid grant and a federal grant, over $7.6 million to apply to the project. So these are all things we got to think about now. Unfortunately, we're a little further in the hole than we thought we were going to be, right? And we thought we might be not in great shape, or we thought we might luck out and be in okay shape. We're in bad shape right now with the budget, so.
Well, but in fairness, I
yeah.
think to the process, I mean,
Yeah.
I think I've heard several of us say this at one time or another, but isn't it actually costing less to the public?
The price of the project
Yeah.
is going up, the cost to the
Was it-
taxpayers is going down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's something still to think about.
It is, it's a thing about, but we also have to look at the total of those bids versus what we would actually go out and ask the public to. Ideally, it would be great if we could just spend the grants on the budget overages, right? But we really need to understand what that overage is now, right? Because you're talking about, not in addition to the construction, you're talking about some contingencies and everything else. But then there's a little bit of a choice menu here to pull some things out, and make it all work. So I find it kind of interesting that it's coming in within the range of where the grants are. So it does give that positive option to the town to say, okay, we'll just take the grant money and apply it to the project budget overage versus applying it to reduce the bonding amount. So I think we have some work to do. I know the building committee is going to be spending time out. You
The building
mentioned.
committee is gonna meet twice before our selectmen's meeting on January 14th.
So we canceled the holidays for the building committee? Is that what we did?
That might have
It's
been
over,
my fault.
right?
So the building committee is gonna come back to us with their recommendation about what should be included, should we decide to go to referendum.
Included in the base or included in the alternates and everything?
Everything,
Yeah.
what should be included.
Along with our recommended.
Here's what the project is.
Right.
Contractor.
15.9 to.
Okay, good.
And then I think we, as board, need to talk about what the options are now that we know this, right? So we had talked about in the spring of going out to the public and asking them to allow us to use the grant money on the budget shortfall.
Yep.
We need to decide if we really want to do that path and what that timeline looks like. I know there's one key date that we have to be mindful of, though. We have bids being held until it's March 20th, right?
Right.
We can't award a contract without having the funding in place, right? So, and we talked about this in the spring, if we were going to do this and meet any kind of bid deadline, we would probably need to have a vote on this prior to that March 20th date. That may not be the only option, though, and I think we need to spend a little time getting information together. I got to talk to council and figure out how this would work. If we were to go to referendum prior to the expiration of the bids, we would be able to take to the public the package with the design, with the budget, and this is it, right?
But caveat to that, could it be more than one question?
So possibly, but the problem is you can't have one question. If you do two questions, you can't have one fail if the other one doesn't pass. You know what I'm
can't
saying?
have no first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then
So-
it becomes a veto.
Yeah, which is unfortunately, I know, which is, because we thought, there's an idea that you can have like 2 or 3 questions, adding $1 million for this. And I'm like,
Right.
but the problem is, what if you're gonna get people that will vote no on the top, but then vote yes on the
Yeah.
not understanding it and stuff. So I don't think we could
Interesting.
probably do something like that. But I think we can, think through how we can structure this. And this is just preliminary feedback I got from bond council. We do need to get moving quickly if we're gonna try to get this done before the March 20th bid expiration date. Because this sets up a series of meetings and votes and Board of Finance weighs in on this as well. And then there's a timeline for a referendum, absentee ballots, all this other stuff. It's doable. I would say if we were to sprint, we could get this done on February 25th. If we want to do it a little bit more methodically, we could get it done in March, at one of the Tuesdays in March, prior to March 20th. But we have to talk about that. I know there was a lot of conversation. Why aren't we putting this on the May referendum? And there, we could do that, but we would lose the budget certainty because the bids would expire. So now you're going out again speculatively and having to rebid. Now we can talk more about
We
that.
could ask the bidders
bids,
to,
Right.
to extend, and even if they needed to put an escalator in there, you know, of some amount.
Have you ever seen them hold bids before?
I've never seen the whole bill bids for 100 days, to go back and ask to hold for another 30, 60 days. I've never seen it.
Especially.
In this market,
market.
yeah, we could ask, certainly,
Based on
if your
your staffing and
your
all
idea
that.
about putting in an escalation factor to cover that, sure. They would be more receptive to holding their bid if they knew they could pad it with a percent of
Well,
something.
they'd still have to be the low bidder, so they couldn't pass.
No, I understand. No.
Well, you'd have to go back to everybody,
Um,
right?
but just-
If you were to ask them that. You
just
can't pick one, right?
Right,
Well,
you'd extend it to all of
You
them.
can't reduce your bid. You can't,
Yeah.
you know.
Um,
Most bidders that I know that they're out will not extend their bid.
Right.
They probably not already, to be honest with you.
Can you just, some of these projects in the ad alternates look like they're very neatly discrete projects, paving a parking lot, doing the landscaping outside, right? Would they ever lend themselves to being teased out of the project and letting the town just attack those as standalone projects? And rather than rely on
Like put it
the
in CIP
the
or something?
PAC group, well, no. So the PAC group would be the general contractor for a paving company to come in.
Yeah.
A paving project of that size is probably something we could manage with our own internal resources as the general contractor.
Depends on the coordination of the scopes, Bruce.
Well, I mean, we're putting in a seawall where,
No, I understand that, but if
where
you're-
we do stuff all over town that are fairly large. I would love to think we could handle a parking lot.
Sure, yeah, but there are other scopes, related to the project. They have to be a clear demarcation.
Absolutely, absolutely. It just, at first blush, so could that ever be considered? And would
Well, we're
it be, would there
talking
be a
about-
cost advantage?
Yeah, no, we are, and Tom talked about this a little bit, so you look at some of these other alternates that are listed in here, and maybe not the site ones, but gymnasium sports equipment, right? That doesn't not have to be through PAC or anybody else for that matter, that can be completely isolated, and we could set up an allowance. The playground does not have to be PAC, right? Anybody can get a playground, right?
Yeah.
The kitchen equipment doesn't have to be through PAC, right? You get the infrastructure in place, the plumbing, and that's it. You leave it and you leave it just like an empty kitchen. You come in with the equipment later. There are others that we probably don't need to do.
But the
So
big guys,
the
big guys are the
site-
the site improvements,
Yeah.
those are.
The site work package is pretty complicated. If you were asking the town to just do the paving and maybe the sidewalks, I don't know, I'd have to talk to Peter, maybe he could say he could handle that. You could break the site work out and bid that as a separate project, as a separate town project, and pay for it from another pool. One of the reasons we made the site work an alternate was because the site work was really never a part of the
Scope.
original
Yeah,
scope in regards to the school renovation. It was supposed to be just renovation of the school within the envelope of the school, but the site is so bad.
well, and the changing of the septic.
Yeah. and then we had to
Disrupted,
do
yeah,
the
so
septic.
I think that
Disruptive.
you could argue this is a separate town project because was not originally envisioned as part of the school renovation, but.
And so so the spirit of the question is, we're gonna have to
Yeah.
think creatively.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
About how we
Yeah.
do all of
Yeah.
this, and, just accepting that these have to be lumped into the main GC. I'm not sure that's a constraint we want to hold ourselves to.
And just so you know, the site work was a daisy chain. So once we realized, oh, we gotta replace the septic, we gotta find the septic, and then we figured out it goes under the only place we can put a new one is under the new playscape, so now the playscape's gotta be moved. We gotta tear up the parking lot to get all the drainage there, Then the town was thinking, oh, maybe we should run all the buildings lines to the new septic system.
We did talk about that, yeah.
And then we're building a new parking lot, and of course, the town engineer now wants to build this all to, ideal storm drainage standards. So everything just piles on, and once you start rebuilding it, now it's a brand new site work package. So that's how the costs grow, but it's gonna be awesome.
So I know that, my thought is obviously we need to have a special meeting to really come back in a more detailed way and talk about options and path forwards and maybe we as a board can submit specific questions that we might have, about
To the building.
what's in here. Yeah, I guess to the building, just trying to understand, because we're looking to the building committee to go like the layers below, right? But there's some high level things, and I think one of the things I want to understand is what is in that base bid package, the vision, right? And I know you've got a lot of that, the designs, the list of what's in it and what's out. I think that's important, so that we understand what you are really getting for this. And then I think we need to have, all right, thank you, Tom, thanks for everything. And then I think we need to talk about the options discussion. What are the, if we're going to go down the referendum path, what would that timeline look at? What are the pros and cons of doing it, prior to the big expirations versus just pushing everything out again, which is another delay, another risk of cost escalation. But we should have those conversations. And then, I know a lot of the people in the public are saying, can't you just cancel the project? Right? Can you just cancel the project? So I think we should have an honest conversation about why we would, I know I personally don't feel we as a board could just go like this, right? This has been 20 years in the making. And so we've got a budget problem. So I think it's really the voters that should be making the decision about the budget, and the project. So we have to look at the different ways we can allow for that. So my thought is we have a schedule our next special meeting to try to dig deeper into that and really have a thoughtful conversation now that we have all this information. And
Is that after we get a recommendation from the building committee, or is that before?
I think we should start our own discussion of process. Like, they're gonna come to us with what they think the number should be. We can do a lot of work before that, and then we'll have our own conversation about after they recommend, what do we feel good about? Do we agree with them? But I think we can get a lot of legwork done about process. Do you guys agree with that? So I did, I'm thinking that would be the good next step for us as a board. And then the Academy Committee has got its kind of timeline, right? And they're gonna be reporting back to us, I think, mid-January with a recommendation.
January 13th
Yeah.
is our next meeting,
Yeah.
so
January 7th.
on the 6th, around the 7th is our next meeting to discuss all of this, craft something by January 13th, which is our following meeting after that. We will have a formal recommendation to you before the next time.
Okay, great. And that helps me with timeline playing out too, because we can't, we need to have their recognition before we can dig into the dollar value piece of this. I think right now it's more about process, right? Like, we know we have a mountain to climb, and we gotta figure out how to get up the mountain. So my thought, I just want to throw this out there, because I know I'm assuming you're going to get some thoughts like from bond council, right? And town council about how this would all work. I was gonna throw out possibly doing, January 2nd.
I'm not
We all
back yet.
enjoy-
I'm not back.
You're not back yet? Okay.
It's
Or January
It's
2nd.
a Thursday.
Okay.
Not a great day.
Okay, so you're looking, we can offline then do some dates the next week. So our meeting would be sometime week of the 6th.
Oh.
So think about what days work and maybe email Jeannie and me on what days work January 6th, the week of January 6th. And then we'll try to get something nailed down. I just want to get a date on the calendar because I got to line up before everybody disappears, like, I got to have the attorneys there and figure that out. So So we good with that? I guess I know we'll probably have some public comment and we'll go on to the next step in the process. It's a never ending discussion about Academy.
It's only been 20 years.
20 years in the making.
Yeah.
That's why I kind of thought it was interesting about when Rasmus said, well, we should step back and look at the whole thing again. I'm like, there's been like 10 committees that is done that already. So, but, all right, with that, I guess we can open up to public comment, and I know there's some hands raised. I request that people keep it to the, topic on the agenda, and if brief, if possible. I know everybody's got a lot of plans this week and next week because the holidays, so we'd love to make this quick, and then there's gonna be lots of opportunity to talk about Academy. There's gonna be public information sessions and lots of meetings, and so to give comment. But anyway, with that, I know Felicia, you've had your hand raised.
So just to introduce myself to you all probably know me, but anybody who's listening, so I'm a building committee member. But I've also been involved with this project since 2019. I also have a master's in historic preservation. I truly am passionate about this building and the value of its architectural significance in this community. I'll keep it brief, but as somebody who's been in this building at least twice a year, every year from 2019, the deterioration I am seeing on the inside every year as it continues to kind of go through this process of 25 years of what we do with this building, it is getting significantly worse than it was in 2019. So as you kind of consider how to move forward with this project, address the budget issues, I just really want to remind you what's at stake in terms of not the use of the building, but the actual physical building. If for some reason this project does not move forward as it is, I really urge you to have an alternative ready at hand, because I don't know that this building can sit another 10 years and be salvageable. And it would be a real shame to have this building disappear because of that. As a historic preservationist, as a taxpayer in this town, there's different ways of looking at it, but I just really want to remind everyone what is at stake with the timeline, unfortunately. That summer where it did not stop raining was not a good summer for this building. So just wanted to put that in everybody's minds to consider as you're thinking about how to package this and alternatives and the fate of this building.
All right, well, thank you for all your work you're doing too on the committee. I know, go ahead, Terry, if you want to speak.
Yeah, in terms of the process.
Let me just do name and address, sorry.
Okay, I said it at the beginning of the meeting, so Terry Van Muller, 17 Bartlett Drive. In terms of the process, I encourage you to include as many people, if it comes to a vote in referendum, as possible. I know I have a few neighbors who are voters. They're Connecticut taxpayers, Connecticut residents, but they're gone for a few months in winter. And they have a right to vote on any project that's going to cost them more. So, they may benefit from the project, but they should be included. It's unfortunate that this couldn't have come up for a vote or referendum in November. It didn't work out timeline wise, but please get it to May where people can show up in numbers and you won't have people second guessing. Why did the town do it in the middle of February? When we had a snowstorm and elderly people aren't going to get out and the senior center isn't even able to get them there. So please consider that. The other thing is nobody's mentioned operating costs per year, $50,000  50,000 square foot building, the operating cost, annual operating cost per year, never mentioned, never looked at as far as I know, just throwing that out there. If it doesn't come to fruition, I encourage anyone and everyone, if you haven't been to the building, the old Witch Hazel building in Essex, please go through it. It's remarkable what that building has turned into. It's beautiful on the inside, it's historic. They've saved so many parts of what that building was and made it far better than you could possibly imagine. It brings in revenue to the town. It has businesses, it has a restaurant, it has fitness capability, fitness center. It has all of that and more. It looks kind of like Academy from the outside, but when you walk in, I was in awe. I never even knew it existed. So I encourage you to take a look at that as an alternative, should this not go to fruition.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Yeah, thank you very much. I know there's a hand raised online. Do you want to?
Go ahead, Jim.
Hi, Jim Schmaltz, Jonathan's Landing. Just a couple of things I wanted to clarify on when you were talking. I think Bruce was talking about the budget, and it would being at 17. It would actually be at 19 without the alternatives, because the 17 million is just the construction. It doesn't include the architects and FF&E line items like in the referendum budget. So it wasn't your whatever the difference is, 19 or 20 million plus the alternates. Also, if I don't believe that they have Build Back Better or Build American pricing on the bids, that would add about a 5%, so about another $1 million, if that's part of the bond, the federal bond, which most of them are. And then being surprised about the electrical and all the mechanical systems in the 2019 report, there's a letter from Tom, the architect, stating that all of those need to be replaced. I also believe that in one of the reports, there were concerns about the septic. So I don't think any of this should have been a surprise. Like, we paid, I'm sure, millions for these reports, and it seems like we just ignored them and started from scratch. So, that's, my comments there.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Any other comments online? I don't see any other hands raised. Like I said, there'll be many opportunities to comment on Academy in the next month or two, so. All right, any more comments in the room? No? All right, with that then, I just want to wish everybody a wonderful, healthy, and happy holiday season. Thank you for coming tonight, and look forward to continuing the conversation in 2025. So with that, hearing no objection, meeting adjourned.